Jasmine's cleaning supplies scattered across the rain-soaked asphalt as the shopping cart slammed into her hip, sending a sharp pain radiating through her side. The metallic clang echoed through the underground parking lot of the luxury apartment complex, where she worked double shifts just to keep her daughter's medication coming. A circle of well-dressed residents had gathered, their designer heels clicking against concrete, watching as Mrs. Chen stood over her with cold disgust written across her face. "You people are always in the way," Mrs. Chen hissed, her Chanel bag swinging as she gestured dismissively. "Crawling around like roaches thinking you belong in our building. You're nothing but hired help." The words hung in the air like poison. Jasmine's eyes burned with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. That's when the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. The parking lot fell silent as polished leather shoes moved across the concrete with deliberate, measured steps. Min-Jun Park had arrived home early. The air changed. Jasmine felt it before she even looked up, a shift in pressure. Like the atmosphere itself was bowing to whoever had just entered the space. The laughter from the crowd died instantly. Designer bags were clutched tighter. Car keys were suddenly remembered. The sharp click of expensive heels began retreating toward vehicles as residents discovered urgent appointments they'd apparently forgotten. Mrs. Chen's venomous smile faltered, her fingers going white-knuckled on her Chanel purse. Jasmine remained on her knees, cleaning supplies scattered around her like evidence of her humiliation. The disinfectant bottle had rolled under a black Mercedes. Her hands trembled as she reached for the microfiber cloths now soaked with rainwater that had leaked through the garage ceiling. The pain in her hip throbbed where the shopping cart had struck, but she'd learned long ago how to swallow pain, how to make herself small and invisible while her body screamed. The footsteps stopped 3 feet from her, close enough that she could see the shoes. Italian leather, polished to a mirror shine, probably worth more than her monthly rent. Close enough to smell cedar and something darker, rain and smoke and expensive cologne that made her pulse kick traitorously in her throat. Mrs. Chen. The voice was quiet, controlled, and absolutely terrifying in its calmness. Explain. It wasn't a request. Jasmine had heard men give orders before, supervisors at the cleaning company, building managers, entitled residents who treated her like part of the furniture. But this was different. This was the voice of someone who'd never had to repeat himself. Someone whose authority was so absolute, so ingrained, that questioning him simply didn't occur to people. She finally looked up. The man standing before her was in his mid-30s, wearing a charcoal suit that had been tailored to his exact measurements. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, the kind of body that spoke of discipline and controlled power. His face was all sharp angles, high cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, a mouth set in a line that suggested he smiled rarely and meant it even less often. But it was his eyes that stole the breath from her lungs. Dark, almost black, they assessed the scene with the precision of someone who saw everything, catalogued every detail, and forgot nothing. There was a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the only flaw in an otherwise perfect face. It should have made him look dangerous. Instead, it made him look deadly. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "This is just adrenaline," she told herself firmly. Just the body's response to confrontation, to being seen when she'd spent 3 months perfecting the art of invisibility in this building. It had nothing to do with the way he commanded space, the way his presence seemed to compress the air around him, the way her skin felt too tight and too hot despite the cold November rain. "Mr. Park!" Mrs. Chen's voice had gone high and tight, the cruelty evaporating into something that sounded almost like fear. This woman had her supplies blocking the entire walkway, and I have cameras covering every inch of this building." Min-Jun Park's voice remained quiet, but something in his tone made Jasmine's skin prickle. "I watched you deliberately ram your cart into her. I heard every word you said." He paused, and the silence stretched like a blade. Would you like to try again? Or would you prefer I play the footage for your husband? I'm certain he'd be interested to know how you spend your afternoons when he's at the office." The color drained from Mrs. Chen's face. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again like a fish drowning in air. Around them, the remaining spectators had melted away entirely. The parking garage now empty except for the three of them and the echo of rain dripping through concrete. I didn't. She was. Mrs. Chen's fingers twisted in her purse strap, knuckles bone white. "You're banned from this building effective immediately," Min-Jun said, his tone conversational, as if he were discussing the weather rather than destroying someone's life. "Your lease is voided. Security will escort you to your unit to collect your personal belongings. You have 1 hour." He made a gesture so subtle Jasmine almost missed it, but 2 men in dark suits materialized from the shadows near the elevators, their faces impassive. "Every property my company manages in Seattle, 73 buildings, in case you're wondering, is now closed to you and your family, permanently." "You can't do this!" Mrs. Chen's voice cracked, desperation replacing arrogance. "We've lived here for 5 years. This is our home." Min-Jun didn't respond. He simply turned his back on her, the dismissal more complete than any words could be. The 2 security men flanked Mrs. Chen, not touching her, but making it clear she had no choice. Her protests echoed as they guided her toward the elevators, her expensive heels clicking frantically against concrete as she tried to maintain some shred of dignity in her retreat. Then, Jasmine was alone with him. He moved toward her, and every nerve ending in her body went on high alert. She should stand up, should create distance, should remember that powerful men didn't do favors without expecting payment, and she couldn't afford the currency he'd demand. But her body refused to obey, frozen as he crouched down in front of her, close enough that she could see the exact moment his eyes focused on the bruise already blooming purple-black on her hip where her uniform had torn. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. When he spoke, his voice had gone even quieter, which somehow made it more intense. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine." The lie came automatically, honed by years of having to be fine, having to push through pain because stopping meant losing shifts, losing money, losing the ability to pay for Maya's medication. His eyes lifted to hers, and Jasmine felt the impact of that gaze like a physical touch. Up close, she could see tiny flecks of amber in the darkness, could see the way he was studying her face with the same meticulous attention he'd given the crime scene moments before. "That's not what I asked." Her breath caught. No one asked her things like this. No one looked at her like she was worth the attention, worth the time it took to wait for a real answer. She opened her mouth to repeat the lie, but something in his expression stopped her. "My hip," she admitted quietly. "It'll bruise, but I've had worse." Something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe, or something darker. His hands had been reaching for the scattered cleaning supplies, but they stilled. "Who gave you worse?" The question was soft, lethal, like he was asking her to name someone so he could add them to a list. "Life," Jasmine said, because it was true, and because she suddenly, desperately needed to look away from those eyes that saw too much. Just life. He resumed collecting her supplies, his movements efficient despite the expensive suit that now had rainwater soaking into the knees. His hands were large, long-fingered, surprisingly gentle as he placed each bottle and cloth into her plastic carrier. When their fingers brushed as he handed her the last spray bottle, electricity shot up Jasmine's arm so suddenly she almost dropped it. Their eyes met again. Held. Something passed between them in that suspended moment, something Jasmine didn't have words for, something that made her pulse spike and her skin flush hot despite the cold garage air. He stood, offering his hand to help her up. Jasmine stared at it for a heartbeat too long, broad palm, calloused in places that didn't match his expensive suit, a thin white scar across his knuckles that spoke of violence she could only imagine. She should refuse, should maintain the professional distance between the woman who cleaned toilets and the man who lived in the penthouse, should protect herself. She took his hand. His palm was warm, his grip firm but careful, and when he pulled her to her feet, she came up closer than she'd intended, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough for his scent to wrap around her like smoke, cedar and rain, and something indefinably male that made her stomach clench, close enough to see the way his pupils dilated slightly, the way a muscle jumped in his jaw as if he were clenching it. They stood there, hands still connected, for 2 seconds that felt like an eternity. Then Jasmine stepped back, nearly stumbling in her haste to create distance. His hand released hers immediately, but she could still feel the imprint of his fingers, the ghost of his warmth. "Thank you," she managed, her voice coming out rougher than intended, for helping, and for what you did to Mrs. Chen. "She assaulted you," Min-Jun said simply. "In my building, under my watch." His eyes held hers. "That doesn't happen without consequences." The possessiveness in his tone, "my building, my watch," should have warned her off. Instead, it sent a thrill through her that she absolutely could not afford to feel. This man was dangerous. Not in the way her ex had been dangerous, all rage and fists and broken promises. This man was dangerous the way fire was dangerous, beautiful, compelling, and capable of burning her to ash if she got too close. "I should get back to work," Jasmine said, gripping her supply carrier like a lifeline. "I'm already behind on my schedule, and I still have 3 more floors to—" "You're not working tonight," Min-Jun interrupted. "You're injured. Go home. Take care of yourself. I can't afford to miss a shift." The words came out sharper than she'd intended, but panic was clawing up her throat. Missing 4 hours meant $32 she wouldn't have. $32 was Maya's medication copay. Was the difference between electricity and candlelight? Was the thing that stood between barely surviving and falling completely apart. "You'll be paid for the full shift." His tone left no room for argument. "And I need to speak with your supervisor about your new assignment." Jasmine's stomach dropped. "New assignment?" "You're being assigned exclusively to my residence," Min-Jun said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Starting tomorrow, 9 a.m., $48 per hour, 20 hours per week, guaranteed." The numbers hit her like a physical blow. $48, 20 hours, that was. That was nearly $1,000 a week, $4,000 a month. That was Maya's cardiologist appointments without having to choose which bills went unpaid. That was food and rent and medication without the constant suffocating terror of not enough, never enough. It was too good to be true. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why would you do this?" Min-Jun tilted his head slightly, studying her with those depthless black eyes. "My penthouse is 12,000 square feet. My nephew lives with me and has the organizational skills of a tornado. My fiancé has very exacting standards." He paused, and something shifted in his expression. "I need someone reliable, discreet, someone who understands the value of dignity." The last word landed between them like a stone dropped in still water. Dignity. 3 months ago, Jasmine had walked into the Meridian Tower with her head high and her heart full of determination. 3 months of being invisible, of being looked through, of swallowing humiliation with every dismissive gesture and condescending tone. And here was this man, this powerful, dangerous, impossibly beautiful man, telling her he saw her, telling her she had worth beyond the floors she scrubbed and the toilets she cleaned. It terrified her. "I need to think about it," she heard herself say, even though she'd already decided, already knew she had no real choice, not when Maya needed her. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Min-Jun reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. holding it out to her. "Give your name to security. They'll send you up." Jasmine took the card with trembling fingers, careful not to let their skin touch again. The cardstock was heavy, expensive, embossed with gold lettering. Min-Jun Park, CEO, Park Development Group. A phone number, nothing else. "Mr. Park," she started, then stopped, unsure what she was even trying to say. "Min-Jun," he said quietly. "You can call me Min-Jun." The intimacy of it made her pulse jump. First names meant proximity, meant crossing lines that should remain firmly drawn. That wouldn't be appropriate. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face, gone so quickly she thought she might have imagined it. Tomorrow, Jasmine. He knew her name. Somehow, impossibly, he knew her name. And the way he said it, careful, deliberate, like he was tasting it, made heat crawl up her neck. Then he was walking away, his footsteps echoing across the empty garage, and Jasmine was left standing there with her cleaning supplies and a business card, and the feeling that her life had just irrevocably changed. She made it to her car, a 15-year-old Honda with a check engine light that had been on for 6 months, before her hands started shaking in earnest. She sat in the driver's seat, staring at the embossed business card, replaying every moment of the last 20 minutes. The way he'd looked at her, the way his hand had felt against hers, the way her entire body had responded to his proximity like he was gravity and she was powerless against the pull. This is dangerous, the rational part of her brain warned. Men like him don't help women like you without expecting something in return. You know this. You've learned this lesson. But the exhausted, desperate part of her, the part that worked 70 hours a week and still came up short, the part that cried in hospital waiting rooms while 5-year-old Maya asked why she couldn't have a normal heart like other kids. That part whispered, "What if this time is different?" Jasmine pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called the one person who might understand. "Rosa, it's me. Something just happened. Something. I don't even know how to explain it." Rosa Martinez had been cleaning houses in Seattle for 20 years. She'd gotten Jasmine the job at the Meridian, had taught her which residents to avoid and which ones tipped during holidays. If anyone could help her make sense of this, it was Rosa. "Mija, you sound like you've seen a ghost. What's wrong?" "Min-Jun Park just..." Jasmine closed her eyes, leaning her head back against the worn seat. "Mrs. Chen attacked me in the parking garage, called me. Well, you can imagine. And he showed up and he just destroyed her, banned her from the building, from every building he owns." Silence on the other end. Then, "Dios mío, Min-Jun Park?" "He offered me a job. Exclusive assignment to his penthouse. $48 an hour, Rosa. 20 guaranteed hours a week." More silence. Jasmine could practically hear Rosa's mind working through the implications. "Jasmine, honey, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Rosa said finally, her voice serious in a way Jasmine had never heard before. "Min-Jun Park is not just some rich businessman. The Park family. They're connected. You understand what I'm saying?" Connected. Jasmine's stomach clenched. Connected like you don't ask questions about their business, Rosa said flatly. Like people who cross them tend to relocate to other cities very suddenly. Like the kind of family that's been running certain operations in Seattle's Koreatown for 3 generations. Mob. Rosa was saying mob without saying it. "But he's never..." Jasmine swallowed hard. "He's never bothered any of us, the staff. You've cleaned for him for 2 years and never had problems." "No," Rosa agreed. "He's always been respectful, professional, generous even. But that doesn't change what he is, Misha. That doesn't change that his world is dangerous." Dangerous. Like she didn't already know that. Like she hadn't felt it radiating off him like heat, seen it in the casual way he'd dismantled Mrs. Chen's entire life with a few quiet words. "I need this job, Rosa," Jasmine said quietly. "Maya's cardiology appointment is next week. The insurance already denied coverage for the new medication Dr. Patel wants to try. I'm 3 weeks from eviction and 4 months behind on medical bills. I need this. Rosa was quiet for a long moment. Then you take it, she said finally. But you keep your head down, you do your job, and you do not get involved in his life beyond those 12,000 square feet. You understand me? Men like Min-Jun Park. They're beautiful, and they're dangerous, and they will break your heart without even meaning to. Beautiful. Had she said that out loud? Had Rosa heard it in her voice? I'm not. This isn't about... Jasmine fumbled for words. I'm not interested in him like that. This is strictly professional. Mija, Rosa said gently. I've been cleaning houses for 20 years. I know what attraction sounds like. And I heard it in every word you just said. After they hung up, Jasmine sat in her car for another 10 minutes, watching rain streak down the windshield, trying to get her thoughts in order. She should say no. Should stay far away from Min-Jun Park and his dangerous world and the way he made her feel things she had no business feeling. Should protect herself and Maya from complications they couldn't afford. But the rent was due in 6 days. Maya's medication would run out in 10, and she was so tired of choosing between groceries and electricity, so tired of lying awake calculating which bill could be pushed back another month, so tired of fighting a battle she was slowly, inevitably losing. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. She started the car and headed toward the daycare, already mentally rearranging her finances, already imagining what it might feel like to breathe without the constant weight of panic pressing down on her chest. Already wondering what it would be like to walk into Min-Jun Park's world and trying very, very hard not to think about the way his hand had felt in hers. Jasmine stood outside the private elevator on the 42nd floor at exactly 8:57 a.m., her heart hammering so hard she was certain the security guard who'd escorted her up could hear it. She'd changed her uniform 3 times that morning, finally settling on her newest one, the one without any frayed edges or permanent stains. Her hands were steady as she raised them to smooth her hair back into its regulation bun, but inside, her stomach churned with a mixture of anticipation and dread that tasted like copper on her tongue. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. No hallway, no buffer between the outside world and Min-Jun Park's private domain. Jasmine stepped through and froze. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the entire western wall, offering a view of Puget Sound that looked like something from a magazine. The morning sun turned the water into liquid gold, fractured light dancing across waves that stretched toward the Olympic Mountains in the distance. The floors were Italian marble. She recognized it from the cleaning manual, pale gray shot through with veins of white that probably cost more per square foot than her annual salary. Modern furniture in shades of charcoal and cream, art on the walls that even her untrained eye recognized as expensive, and a silence so complete it felt like the space itself was holding its breath. You're early. Jasmine spun around, nearly dropping her supply caddy. Min-Jun stood in a doorway she hadn't noticed, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. No tie, no jacket. The casualness should have made him less intimidating. It didn't. If anything, seeing him in his private space, relaxed and unguarded, made her pulse spike even harder than it had in the parking garage. Yes, I'm sorry. I can wait downstairs until... It's fine. He moved into the room with that same controlled grace she remembered, and Jasmine found herself tracking every step. I appreciate punctuality. Coffee? The question threw her. Bosses didn't offer their cleaning staff coffee. No, thank you. I should start working. I don't want to waste your time. Uncle Min. A small body came tearing around the corner. A boy, maybe 8 years old, with Min-Jun's sharp features softened by youth and an expression of pure joy that transformed his face. He skidded to a stop when he saw Jasmine, dark eyes going wide with curiosity rather than the suspicion she'd expected. David. Min-Jun's voice held a note of fondness that made something in Jasmine's chest ache. This is Miss Carter. She'll be taking care of the penthouse from now on. Hi! David bounced on his toes, energy radiating from every pore. Are you nice? The last cleaning lady yelled at me for leaving my Legos out. But Uncle Min said it's okay to leave them out, because it's my home too, and homes are supposed to have kid stuff in them, right? Jasmine found herself smiling despite her nerves. That sounds very reasonable to me. Though maybe we could work out a system? Like, you could have certain spots that are your special Lego zones, and I'll work around them? David's entire face lit up. Really? That would be so cool. Can I show you my room? I have this whole city I'm building, and it has a fire station and everything, and… David. Min-Jun's tone was gentle but firm. Ms. Carter needs to work. You can show her later after school. The boy's shoulders slumped, but he nodded. Then he turned back to Jasmine with a gap-toothed grin. You're way nicer than Vivian. She says kids should be invisible. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Jasmine watched Min-Jun's jaw tighten, watched the way his hand came to rest on David's shoulder in a gesture that was both protective and restraining. David, go get your backpack. The car's waiting. After the boy disappeared down a hallway, Min-Jun turned to her, and Jasmine saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Weariness. My nephew lost both his parents 2 years ago. Car accident. He came to live with me. A pause, heavy with things unsaid. He needs kindness more than he needs perfection. The vulnerability in that admission made Jasmine's throat tight. I understand, she said quietly, and she did. Maya had lived through her own trauma, medical, not loss, but trauma nonetheless. She knew what it looked like when children built walls to protect themselves, knew how rare and precious genuine joy was in kids who'd learned too young that the world could hurt. Thank you. Min-Jun held her gaze for a moment that stretched too long, then seemed to catch himself. I'll have someone show you around. The kitchen staff can answer any questions about… There's kitchen staff, Jasmine blurted, then immediately wanted to sink through the marble floor. That ghost of amusement flickered across his face again. A cook comes in for dinner 4 nights a week. Otherwise, I manage. Or David and I order takeout and pretend vegetables don't exist. The image of this dangerous, powerful man negotiating with an 8-year-old over broccoli made something warm unfurl in Jasmine's chest. Dangerous. This is dangerous. You're here to work, not to find him charming. I'll figure it out, she said, forcing professionalism into her tone. I'm sure I can… Min-Jun, darling, have you seen my… A woman appeared in the same doorway David had exploded from, and Jasmine's first thought was that she looked like she'd stepped out of Vogue. Mid-40s, perfect black hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a cream silk blouse and designer slacks that probably cost more than Jasmine's car. Beautiful in the way of expensive things, polished, precise, untouchable. The woman's eyes landed on Jasmine, and her expression curdled into something between disgust and dismissal. Oh, the new help. I wasn't aware we were starting quite so early. Every word dripped with condescension. Jasmine had heard that tone before, had heard it from dozens of residents who looked through her like she was furniture. But hearing it here, in this space where Min-Jun had just been talking to her like a person, made it sting in unexpected ways. Vivian, this is Jasmine Carter. Min-Jun's voice had gone carefully neutral. Jasmine, my fiancée, Vivian Zhao. Zhao, not Chen. Jasmine felt a flash of relief. At least this woman wasn't related to the parking garage horror from yesterday. But the relief was short-lived as Vivian's razor-sharp smile cut into her. How lovely. I'm sure you'll do. Adequately. Though I should mention I have very high standards. The previous girl simply couldn't manage to meet them. I do hope you'll prove more… competent. The emphasis on the last word made it clear exactly what Vivian thought of Jasmine's competence. This was going to be a problem. This was going to be a massive, complicated problem that Jasmine couldn't afford to have. I'll do my best, ma'am. Jasmine said, keeping her voice level, her expression neutral, even as fury burned hot in her chest. See that you do? Vivian turned to Min-Jun, her tone shifting to something saccharine. Darling, I'm having lunch with Mother at the club. I'll need the Mercedes. Take it. Min-Jun's attention was already elsewhere, his phone buzzing with what must have been an important message, because his expression had gone hard and focused. Vivian left in a cloud of expensive perfume, and Jasmine was alone with Min-Jun again. He looked up from his phone, and something in his eyes suggested he knew exactly how that interaction had felt, how the words had landed like small cuts. He stopped, seeming to choose his words carefully. Vivian can be particular. Don't take it personally. But it was personal. It was always personal when people looked at you like you were less than human. Jasmine just nodded, not trusting her voice. Min-Jun studied her for a moment longer, then seemed to come to some decision. If she's ever inappropriate with you, I want to know. Immediately. The protectiveness in his tone made her pulse jump. I can handle it. I know you can. His eyes held hers. That doesn't mean you should have to. Then he was gone, called away by whatever crisis his phone had alerted him to, and Jasmine was left standing in 12,000 square feet of marble and glass, wondering how she was going to survive working in close proximity to a man who made her heart race and her common sense evaporate. While she worked downstairs, Min-Jun sat in his office trying to focus on the import manifest his lieutenant had flagged as suspicious. The numbers blurred on the screen. His attention kept drifting to the security feeds he definitely should not have been monitoring, should not have opened, should not have been using to watch Jasmine move through his kitchen with unconscious grace. She cleaned the way she did everything, with quiet competence and unexpected care. Most people rushed through tasks, cutting corners, doing the bare minimum. Jasmine treated his space like it mattered, like the small details were worth her attention. She'd noticed a loose handle on one of the cabinet doors and had already fixed it with tools from her caddy, had rearranged the spice rack into alphabetical order, had wiped down baseboards most cleaners never touched. Beautiful women threw themselves at him constantly. Models, socialites, daughters of business associates, all looking to attach themselves to his money and power. He felt nothing. A mild appreciation for aesthetics, perhaps, the same way he might admire a painting. But nothing that made him want to know them, to understand what made them laugh or what haunted them in the dark hours before dawn. This woman in a worn cleaning uniform, exhausted and proud, refusing to be invisible. She'd been under his skin since the first time he'd seen her on the security feeds 3 months ago, and every interaction since had only made it worse. This was a problem. He didn't do distractions, didn't do complications. His engagement to Vivian was a business arrangement, a strategic alliance between families that benefited everyone's bottom line. Love wasn't part of the equation. He'd made peace with that years ago. So why was he finding excuses to stay home? Why had he rearranged his morning meetings so he could be here when she arrived? Why did the thought of her cleaning someone else's home make his jaw clench with something that felt dangerously close to jealousy? His phone buzzed. His second in command, Jin. We have a situation at the warehouse. The shipment from Busan. Something's off with the inventory. Min-Jun forced his attention back to business, away from the woman moving through his kitchen who had no idea she was completely destroying his carefully maintained control. 3 days passed, then a week. Jasmine fell into a rhythm. Arrive at 9, work until 2, pick up Maya from the subsidized after-school program instead of the expensive daycare that had been eating through her paychecks. The difference in her bank account was already staggering. She'd paid her rent in full, had bought groceries without checking the price of every item, had scheduled Maya's cardiology appointment without the suffocating panic of wondering how she'd cover the copay. She should have been relieved, should have been grateful, should have been focused on the job and nothing else. Instead, she was hyper-aware of Min-Jun every second he was in the penthouse, the way he moved through space like a predator, all controlled power and unconscious grace. The way his voice dropped when he was on business calls, going soft and deadly in a way that made her skin prickle. The way he was with David, patient and gentle and completely devoted in a way that made her chest ache with wanting things she had no right to want. They'd developed a routine. He'd make coffee when she arrived, leaving a cup exactly how she liked it, 2 sugars, splash of cream, on the kitchen counter. They'd exchange maybe a dozen words, professional, appropriate. Then he'd disappear into his office, and she'd work, and they'd maintain the careful distance that was absolutely necessary and completely impossible. Friday afternoon, Jasmine brought Maya with her. The after-school program closed early on Fridays, and she'd negotiated permission to bring her daughter for the last hour of her shift, promising Maya would be quiet and wouldn't touch anything. Maya, 5 years old with her mother's eyes and a heart condition that made every day a gift Jasmine didn't take for granted, lasted approximately 3 minutes before wandering away from the coloring book Jasmine had brought. "Mama, who lives here? Are they a prince?" "Something like that, baby. Now come back here and—" "Hi!" Jasmine's heart stopped. She turned to find David standing in the kitchen doorway, staring at Maya with the same wide-eyed curiosity Maya was directing at him. "I'm David. Do you like Legos? I'm building a whole city. Want to see?" Maya looked at Jasmine, hope written across every inch of her small face. And Jasmine, who should have said no, who should have kept her daughter separate from this world and these people, found herself nodding. 30 minutes, she said. Then we have to go. The children disappeared, and Jasmine sagged against the counter, trying to remember how to breathe. This was getting too complicated, too messy, too close to a life that wasn't hers, and never would be. They'll be fine. She spun around. Min-Jun stood in the kitchen entrance, still in his work clothes, but with his tie loosened and the top button of his shirt undone. The column of his throat was exposed, and Jasmine's eyes tracked to it before she could stop herself, caught on the strong line of it, the pulse beating visibly beneath golden skin. "I'm sorry," she managed. "I should have asked permission before. David needs friends." Min-Jun moved into the kitchen, and suddenly the massive space felt impossibly small. "He doesn't have many. Most parents don't want their children playing with." He trailed off, but Jasmine understood, with the nephew of a mobster, with someone connected to darkness. "Maya doesn't have many either," Jasmine admitted. "Medical stuff keeps her out of school a lot. Other kids don't understand." He was close now, 3 feet away. Close enough that she could smell cedar and rain, could feel the heat radiating from him, could see the exact moment his eyes dropped to her mouth and stayed there for a heartbeat too long. The air between them crackled with electricity. Jasmine's pulse hammered in her throat. She should step back, should remember who she was, who he was, all the 1,000 reasons this couldn't happen. She didn't move, neither did he. "Jasmine," he said, and her name in his voice was like a physical touch, rough and careful at the same time. "This is a bad idea," she whispered, even as her body swayed toward him like he was gravity. "I know." His hand lifted, and she tracked the movement like prey watching a predator. Watching as his fingers rose toward her face. Watching as he seemed to war with himself. Watching as... "Uncle Min, can Maya stay for dinner? Please?" They sprang apart like they'd been burned. David and Maya stood in the doorway, both grinning, completely oblivious to what they'd interrupted. Min-Jun's hand dropped. Jasmine turned away, pressing trembling fingers to her lips, trying to get her breathing under control. "That's up to her mother," Min-Jun said, and his voice was steady, controlled, revealing nothing of the moment they'd just shared. "We can't," Jasmine said quickly. "We have. We need to. Thank you, but no." She gathered Maya, made her excuses, and fled. In the elevator, with her daughter chattering happily about David's Lego city, Jasmine leaned against the wall and tried to process what had almost happened. He'd almost touched her. She'd almost let him. And if David hadn't interrupted, she wasn't sure either of them would have stopped. That night, alone in her small apartment while Maya slept, Jasmine admitted the truth she'd been avoiding for a week. She was attracted to Min-Jun Park. Deeply, dangerously attracted in a way that had nothing to do with his money or power, and everything to do with the way he looked at her like she mattered, like she was worth protecting, like she was something more than invisible. And that attraction was going to destroy her if she wasn't careful. 3 weeks had passed since that moment in the kitchen when Min-Jun had almost touched her face and Jasmine's entire world had almost shifted on its axis. 3 weeks of careful distance, of professional pleasantries, of pretending her body didn't come alive every time he walked into a room. 3 weeks of lying to herself that this was just a job, just a paycheck, just a means to survive. Maya came every Friday now. Min-Jun had suggested it. Carefully, professionally, phrased as a convenience since the after-school program closed early, and it made more sense for Jasmine to bring her daughter than to rush across the city. David had been ecstatic. The two children had bonded with the easy intimacy of kids who recognized loneliness in each other, building elaborate Lego worlds and inventing games that involved blanket forts spanning half the penthouse. Watching them together made Jasmine's chest ache with wanting things she couldn't afford to want. Made her imagine impossible futures where her daughter had this, space to play, safety to laugh, the kind of childhood that wasn't defined by hospital waiting rooms and medical debt. Made her imagine Min-Jun as something more than her employer. It was a Friday afternoon when everything shifted. Jasmine was cleaning the master bathroom, all marble and gold fixtures and a shower big enough for 4 people, when she heard raised voices from the bedroom. She froze, cloth in hand, instinct telling her to make herself invisible. "This is unacceptable, Min-Jun." Vivian's voice, sharp with barely contained rage. "That woman and her child are here constantly. This is our home, not a daycare center." "David is happy." Min-Jun's tone was flat, emotionless in the way Jasmine had learned meant he was furious. "That's what matters. What matters is appearances. What will people think when they see the help's daughter running around like she owns the place? It's inappropriate. It's careful." One word, soft and deadly. Very careful how you finish that sentence. Silence. Then the slam of a door, the click of expensive heels on marble, and Vivian swept past the bathroom without even glancing inside. Jasmine released the breath she'd been holding, her hands trembling around the cleaning cloth. She should have stayed hidden, should have finished her work and left. Instead, she found herself walking into the bedroom where Min-Jun stood by the window, his back to her, shoulders rigid with tension. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to cause problems between you and—" "You didn't." He didn't turn around. "Vivian has opinions about many things. They're rarely my concern." The dismissiveness in his tone surprised her. This was his fiancée, the woman he was supposedly planning to marry, and he spoke about her like she was a business associate he barely tolerated. "The engagement," Jasmine said slowly, pieces clicking together. "It's not. You don't love her." Now he turned, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. Raw, honest, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen him. "Love was never part of the arrangement. Vivian's family has banking connections my organization needs. My family has influence her father wants. It's business." "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard," Jasmine whispered before she could stop herself. Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe, or pain. He moved toward her, and she should have stepped back, should have maintained distance, should have remembered all the reasons this was dangerous. She stood her ground. "Is it?" he asked, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Sadder than working 70 hours a week just to afford your daughter's medication. Sadder than swallowing your pride every day while people treat you like you're invisible? The words should have felt like an attack. Instead, they felt like recognition, like he saw her, really saw her, in ways no one else ever had. At least I'm fighting for something real, Jasmine said, for someone I love. You're settling for a life that will never make you happy, and that's a choice. You have options, I don't. You think I have options? His hand lifted, and this time there was no child to interrupt, nothing to stop him as his fingers brushed her cheek with devastating gentleness. You think I can just walk away from family obligations, from expectations, from the life I was born into? His touch sent electricity racing through her veins. Her pulse hammered so hard she was certain he could see it beating in her throat. Yes, she breathed, because you're the most powerful person I've ever met, and if you can't choose your own happiness, then what hope do the rest of us have? For a moment, they stood frozen, his hand on her face, her eyes locked with his, the air between them crackling with all the things they weren't saying. Then Min-Jun dropped his hand and stepped back, and the loss of his touch felt like cold water. You should go, he said, his voice rough. It's late. Maya will be wondering where you are. Jasmine nodded, not trusting her voice. She gathered the children, made her goodbyes, and left. But in the elevator, with Maya chattering beside her, all she could think about was the way his fingers had felt against her skin, the way his eyes had held hers like she was something precious. All she could think was that she was falling for a man she could never have. In his private study, away from security cameras and prying eyes, Min-Jun poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and tried to get his hands to stop shaking. He'd touched her. He'd broken his own rules, crossed a line he'd sworn he wouldn't cross, and the worst part was that he wanted to do it again. Wanted to do more than just brush his fingers against her cheek. Wanted to pull her against him and find out if she tasted as sweet as she looked, if the attraction burning between them would incinerate them both if they let it. This was madness. She worked for him. She was vulnerable, dependent on the paycheck he provided, and taking advantage of that would make him the kind of man he'd spent his life trying not to become. She deserved better than to be another conquest, another complication in a life already too full of darkness. But when she'd looked at him with those eyes full of understanding and challenge, and something that looked dangerously like desire, he'd wanted to be the man she seemed to think he could be. The man who chose happiness over obligation. The man who deserved someone like her. He'd been aware of her for months before the parking garage incident, had watched her on security feeds, the way she moved with unconscious grace, the way she treated his space with care, the way she refused to let the world make her small. Beautiful women threw themselves at him constantly. He felt nothing. But this woman in a worn uniform, exhausted and proud, refusing to be invisible? She'd gotten under his skin without even trying, and now she was in his home every day, and he was finding excuses to be there during her shifts, and he was thinking about her when he should be focused on business, and he was so completely, utterly compromised that it terrified him. His phone buzzed. Jin, his lieutenant. We have a problem. The FBI's been asking questions about our import operations. Someone's feeding them information. Min-Jun forced his mind back to business, back to the dangerous world Jasmine knew nothing about, back to reality. The following week, Vivian's hostility escalated. She began leaving messes deliberately, spilled wine on white carpets, sticky handprints on windows Jasmine had just cleaned, trash scattered across spotless surfaces. Then she'd reappear hours later, inspect the work with narrowed eyes, and find fault with everything. This is unacceptable, Vivian said on Tuesday, running a finger along a bookshelf and examining it like she expected to find dust. I can see streaks on these windows. The bathroom grout isn't white enough. Are you even trying, or are you just incompetent? Jasmine bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood. I'll redo them, Ms. Chen. See that you do, honestly. I don't know what Min-Jun was thinking, hiring you. There are agencies that provide properly trained staff, but he insisted on. Vivian's eyes raked over Jasmine, disgust evident in every line of her face. Well, I suppose men have their reasons. The implication hung in the air like poison. Jasmine's hands clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms hard enough to hurt. She would not react, would not give this woman the satisfaction, would not risk the job that was keeping her daughter alive. "I'll make sure everything meets your standards, Ms. Chen," she said, keeping her voice level through sheer force of will. After Vivian left, Jasmine sat on the bathroom floor and let herself shake. Let herself feel the humiliation and rage and helplessness for exactly 60 seconds. Then she stood up, washed her face, and got back to work. She didn't tell Min-Jun. He'd asked her to report inappropriate behavior, but Vivian was technically her employer too, and complaining felt like weakness, felt like she couldn't handle it, felt like proving Vivian right about her incompetence. But Min-Jun noticed anyway. Thursday evening, Jasmine was finishing up when he appeared in the kitchen doorway. "We need to talk." Her stomach dropped. This was it. Vivian had complained, and he was going to let her go, and she'd be back to juggling 3 buildings and impossible hours and never enough money. "If this is about the windows, I can—" "It's about Vivian treating you like shit." Min-Jun interrupted, his voice hard. "I've been watching the security feeds. I saw what she's been doing. The deliberate messes, the verbal abuse." Jasmine's face flamed with humiliation. He'd been watching, had seen her on her knees scrubbing wine out of carpet, had heard the verbal degradation, had witnessed her swallowing her pride over and over. "I can handle it." "I know you can." He moved into the kitchen, and the air pressure changed. "That's not the question. The question is, why the hell are you protecting her?" "I'm not protecting her." The words burst out sharper than she'd intended. "I'm protecting my job, my daughter's medication, the roof over our heads. I'm protecting everything I can't afford to lose," which is apparently something you don't understand because you've never had to choose between pride and survival. Silence crashed between them. Jasmine pressed her hand to her mouth, horror washing over her. She'd just yelled at her employer, had just accused him of— "You're right." Min-Jun's voice was quiet. "I don't know what that's like. I was born into money and power, and I've never had to make those choices." He paused, and when he spoke again, something raw had entered his tone. "But I know what it's like to feel trapped, to have your entire life dictated by obligations and expectations, to wake up every day and play a role that's slowly killing you inside." Jasmine looked up at him, really looked, and saw past the expensive clothes and controlled exterior to the man underneath. The man who'd taken in his orphaned nephew and learned to build Lego cities. The man who was engaged to someone he didn't love because family demanded it. The man who touched her like she was something precious and then pulled away because he thought she deserved better. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have—" "Don't apologize for being honest." He was close now, too close, and she could smell cedar and rain, could see the amber flecks in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I'm done with Vivian. The engagement is over." Jasmine's heart stuttered. "What? You can't— The business arrangement, your family's— I don't care." His hand came up, cupping her face with devastating gentleness. "I've spent my entire life doing what was expected of me, being who my family needed me to be. And I'm tired, Jasmine. I'm so fucking tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel." Her breath caught. "What do you feel? You." The word was rough, raw, honest. "Every second of every day, I feel you. The way you move through my space like you belong there. The way you love your daughter with everything you have. The way you refuse to let the world make you small." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. "The way you look at me like I'm more than what I do, more than what I own, like I'm someone who could deserve you." Tears pricked Jasmine's eyes. This was impossible. This was dangerous. This was everything she told herself she couldn't want. "You barely know me." I know you work 3 jobs to pay for your daughter's medication. I know you fix cabinet handles when you think no one's watching. I know you arrange my nephew's Legos into patterns because it calms him down. I know you taste your coffee before adding sugar. And you always check the weather on your phone, even though you're going straight from your car to a climate-controlled building. His other hand came up, framing her face with both palms now. I know you're the strongest person I've ever met, and I know that wanting you is the most honest thing I've felt in years. This is a bad idea, Jasmine whispered, even as her hands came up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palms. I work for you. You're engaged. There are 1,000 reasons this can't happen. Give me one good one. His forehead dropped to rest against hers, and the intimacy of it stole the breath from her lungs. One real reason, and I'll walk away. I'll keep my distance. I'll never touch you again. Jasmine opened her mouth to list all the reasons, the power imbalance, the danger, the impossibility of someone like her with someone like him. But what came out instead was, I'm scared. Of me? He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, concern written across his face. Of this, of wanting something I can't have, of letting myself believe. She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. That you deserve to be happy? Min-Jun asked gently. That you deserve to be chosen? That you're worth more than just surviving? The words broke something inside her. Jasmine felt tears spill over, and then his thumbs were wiping them away, and his eyes were so full of something that looked like reverence that she couldn't breathe. I would choose you, he said, and each word landed like a vow. Over family obligations, over business arrangements, over everything. I would choose you, Jasmine, if you'd let me. She was going to kiss him. The realization hit her with absolute clarity. She was going to rise up on her toes and press her mouth to his and damn every consequence, was going to take this moment of beautiful impossibility and make it real. His phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession, the emergency signal. Min-Jun's entire body went rigid. He stepped back, pulling the phone from his pocket, and Jasmine watched his expression shift from vulnerable to deadly in the space of a heartbeat. What? He barked into the phone. Then, how many? A pause. Burn it. All of it. I'm on my way. He hung up, and when he looked at her, she saw both regret and something darker, something that reminded her exactly who he was, what he was. I have to go. There's a situation. Is everything okay? A stupid question. Clearly everything was not okay. It will be. He moved toward the door, then stopped, turning back. Jasmine, what I said, I meant it. Every word. Then he was gone, and Jasmine was left standing in his kitchen, her face still warm from his touch, her heart racing, her entire world tilted on an axis she didn't recognize. She gathered her things on autopilot, her mind spinning. He'd almost kissed her. She'd almost let him. And if his phone hadn't rung, she wasn't sure anything could have stopped them. The real question was, did she want to stop? Saturday morning, Jasmine arrived at the penthouse to find it empty except for David, who informed her that Uncle Min had been gone all night and Vivian had left in a fury yesterday afternoon, taking all her clothes. The boy seemed unbothered by this development, more interested in showing Jasmine the new section of his Lego city. Jasmine worked in a daze, replaying every word from the night before. He'd said he was ending the engagement, had said he wanted her, had touched her like she was something precious, and looked at her like she was worth choosing. It was too good to be true. Men like him didn't choose women like her, didn't walk away from family obligations and business arrangements for someone who scrubbed their floors. This was a fantasy, a beautiful moment that would evaporate in daylight when he remembered reality. She was cleaning Vivian's office, soon to be someone else's office, she supposed, when she accidentally knocked over a designer purse left carelessly on the desk. The contents spilled across the floor in a cascade of expensive lipsticks and credit cards and… Jasmine froze. Bank statements. Dozens of them. Printed on paper that looked official, showing systematic withdrawals from accounts labeled Park Family Holdings. $847,000 over 8 months. And beneath them, letters. Love letters, written in Vivian's distinctive handwriting, addressed to someone named Marcus. Drain him dry before the wedding, one read. Monaco in 6 months with enough to disappear forever. Horror washed over Jasmine in cold waves. This was theft, embezzlement, evidence of a crime that could destroy Min-Jun's family, his business, everything. She heard footsteps in the hallway, Vivian's voice, talking on the phone. Don't care what you have to do. Just make sure those transfers clear before he notices. Jasmine's hands shook as she grabbed her phone and started taking pictures. Every bank statement, every letter, every piece of evidence she could capture before… The door slammed open. Vivian stood there, her face twisted with rage, and Jasmine knew with absolute certainty that she was in serious danger. You stupid, stupid bitch. Vivian's voice was pure venom as she crossed the office in 3 strides, her hand connecting with Jasmine's face with enough force to snap her head to the side. The phone flew from Jasmine's grip, clattering across the hardwood floor. Pain exploded across her cheek, bright and sharp, and she tasted blood where her teeth had cut the inside of her mouth. Those are private documents, Vivian hissed, grabbing a fistful of Jasmine's uniform and slamming her against the wall. For a woman in designer heels and silk, she was surprisingly strong, surprisingly vicious. You have no right to touch them, you interfering… Jasmine's survival instincts kicked in, the ones learned growing up in South Seattle. The ones she'd honed during the 2 years with her ex before she'd finally escaped. She brought her knee up hard, connecting with Vivian's stomach. The older woman gasped and stumbled back, and Jasmine lunged for her phone. But Vivian recovered faster than expected, grabbing Jasmine's hair and yanking her backward. They crashed into the desk, scattering papers and pens. Vivian's nails raked across Jasmine's face, drawing blood. Her other hand grabbed for the phone, trying to wrench it away. You're going to delete those photos? Vivian snarled, her face twisted with rage. And then I'm calling the police and telling them you were stealing my jewelry. They'll believe me. I'm Vivian Zhao. You're just the hired help. Jasmine's nose was bleeding now, warm blood trickling down her face, but her fingers closed around her phone. She pulled it close to her chest, protecting it with her body even as Vivian hit her again. No. The word came out clear, strong, definitive. Vivian's eyes went wild. She grabbed Jasmine's throat, squeezing. Give me the phone. Black spots danced at the edges of Jasmine's vision. She couldn't breathe. Vivian's perfectly manicured nails dug into her windpipe, and distantly she heard footsteps running, heard a young voice screaming, Uncle Min! Uncle Min, help! Vivian was suddenly yanked off her with such force that she flew backward, slamming into the bookshelf. Books rained down around her, and Min-Jun stood there, his hand still outstretched from where he'd thrown her. His face a mask of cold, controlled fury that was more terrifying than any rage could have been. Don't move. His voice was death itself. Vivian froze, one hand pressed to her shoulder where she'd hit the shelf. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead. Min-Jun turned to Jasmine, and the fury drained from his expression, replaced by something raw and broken. Are you hurt? Jasmine's hand went to her throat, feeling the tender spots where bruises were already forming. Her face throbbed, her nose was still bleeding, but she was alive and she had the evidence. I'm okay. You're not okay. He moved toward her, his hands hovering like he wanted to touch her, but didn't know where he could without causing more pain. David, call Dr. Kim. Tell him I need him here immediately. The boy ran from the doorway where he'd been frozen in shock, and Jasmine heard his small voice in the hallway, making the call with trembling precision. Min-Jun's attention returned to her. "Show me what you found." With shaking hands, Jasmine pulled up the photos on her phone, watched Min-Jun's expression go from concern to icy calculation as he scrolled through image after image. Bank statements, love letters, evidence of systematic theft that had been happening right under his nose. "Marcus," he said, his voice flat. "The FBI agent, of course." "FBI?" Jasmine's voice came out hoarse, her throat damaged from Vivian's assault. "We've been investigating a leak in our organization, someone feeding information to federal agents." Min-Jun looked at Vivian, who had gone pale. "It was you. You and your lover. He was using you to get inside intelligence, and you were using him as cover while you drained our accounts." "Min-Jun, I can explain," Vivian started. "Don't." He cut her off with a single word, his tone making it clear that nothing she said could possibly matter. He pulled out his phone, made a call. "Jin, send a team to the penthouse. We have a situation." A pause. "Also, contact our attorney. We're pressing charges. Assault, theft, embezzlement, everything." Another pause. "And find Marcus Wong. I don't care what rock he's hiding under. Find him." He hung up and turned back to Jasmine. "The doctor will be here in 10 minutes. After he treats you, you're going to tell me everything, every word she said, every document you saw, all of it." Jasmine nodded, then winced as the movement sent pain shooting through her abused face. Min-Jun's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from violence. 2 hours later, after Dr. Kim had examined her and declared nothing broken but prescribed pain medication and rest, after Min-Jun's security team had escorted a handcuffed Vivian from the building, after the police had taken statements and photographs of evidence, Jasmine sat on Min-Jun's sofa with an ice pack pressed to her face and tried to process everything that had happened. David was with the housekeeper in his room, being kept safely away from the aftermath. Maya was still at the after-school program, blissfully unaware of the violence that had unfolded. Min-Jun appeared in the doorway, 2 glasses of whiskey in his hands. He offered her one silently. She took it, their fingers brushing, and that familiar electricity sparked even through the pain and exhaustion. "You should have told me what she was doing," he said quietly, sitting beside her. Not too close, respecting her space. "The deliberate messes, the verbal abuse, you should have told me." "I was protecting my job," Jasmine said. "Protecting Maya." "I didn't think—" "You thought you had to handle it alone." His eyes held hers. "You thought you couldn't ask for help because people like me don't help people like you without expecting something in return." It wasn't a question. Jasmine looked away, unable to hold his gaze. "Experience taught me that." "Then your experience has been with the wrong people." Min-Jun set down his glass and turned to face her fully. "I meant what I said last night. Every word. I'm done with obligations that don't serve me. Done with playing roles that kill me inside. Done with pretending I don't—" He stopped, seeming to wage an internal battle. "That I don't feel what I feel for you." Jasmine's breath caught. "Min-Jun," his phone buzzed, once, twice. 3 times in rapid succession, the emergency signal. He grabbed it, his expression shifting to deadly focus as he listened. "When?" A pause. "How did they know she'd be there?" Another pause, and the color drained from his face. "Find her. Now, every resource we have. Find her." He hung up, and when he looked at Jasmine, she saw fear in his eyes for the first time. Real, raw fear. "Where's Maya?" Ice flooded Jasmine's veins. "She's at the after-school program. My shift ran late today because I was dealing with Vivian's messes, so I couldn't pick her up early like usual." "Why? What's—" "A rival gang just hit the program. They took her." His voice was steady, controlled, but she could see the terror beneath. "They're using her as leverage. Against me. They think—" He stopped, jaw working. "They think she's mine. They think you're mine. The world tilted. Jasmine was on her feet before conscious thought. Ice pack forgotten. Pain forgotten. Everything forgotten except the primal terror of her baby in danger. We have to go. We have to find her. We have to… Hey! Min-Jun caught her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Breathe. We will find her. I have 40 men on this already. I will tear this city apart brick by brick if I have to, but we will find her. I promise you. She has a heart condition, Jasmine whispered, tears streaming down her face. If she gets too stressed, if her heart… I know. His hands framed her face with devastating gentleness. I know, and we're going to get her back, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Jasmine looked into his eyes and saw absolute certainty. This man who commanded empires, who made people tremble with a word, who had just destroyed his fiancée's life without hesitation, he was promising to bring her daughter home. And she believed him. Yes, she breathed. I trust you. Something shifted in his expression. Then his phone was ringing again, and he was barking orders, and they were moving. The warehouse was in the industrial district, surrounded by Min-Jun's men in a careful perimeter. Jin, his second-in-command, met them at the entrance with a grim expression. She's inside. 3 men guarding her. They want to negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate, Min-Jun said coldly. They took what's mine. There are consequences for that. His men moved like a coordinated machine, breaching the warehouse with military precision. Jasmine followed Min-Jun, her heart in her throat, praying to gods she didn't believe in that Maya was okay, that they weren't too late, that… They found her in a back room, sitting alone in a corner, tear-stained but alive. The men who'd taken her were already on the ground, subdued by Min-Jun's team. Maya's eyes went wide when she saw Jasmine, and she screamed, "Mama!" and ran. Jasmine caught her daughter and sank to her knees, sobbing into Maya's hair, checking her over frantically for injuries. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? Baby, talk to me. I hid, Maya whispered, like you taught me. In the vent at first, then in the corner. They were mean, but I didn't cry. I was brave like you. You were so brave, Jasmine choked out. So brave, baby. She looked up to thank Min-Jun and found him watching them with an expression so full of protective tenderness that it stole her breath. This man who'd just orchestrated a military-style rescue operation, who had grown men cowering in fear, he was looking at her daughter like she was precious, like she mattered, like she was his to protect. In the car on the way back to the penthouse, because Min-Jun had insisted they stay with him until the threat was neutralized, Maya fell asleep against Jasmine's shoulder, exhausted by terror and relief. Jasmine held her close, breathing in the scent of her daughter's shampoo, feeling the steady beat of her precious, damaged heart. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything, for finding her, for… Don't thank me. Min-Jun's voice was rough. They took her because of me, because someone saw you at my home and assumed you were important to me. He paused, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. They weren't wrong. Jasmine's pulse kicked. Min-Jun, you were willing to die rather than give up evidence that could help me, he said, his eyes still on the road. You took a beating from Vivian and refused to back down. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I… He pulled the car over abruptly, throwing it into park, and turned to face her fully. I can't do this anymore. Can't pretend I don't feel what I feel. Can't watch you walk out my door every day wondering if I'll ever see you again. What are you saying? Jasmine whispered. I'm saying I would burn this entire city down for you, Min-Jun said, his voice fierce and tender at once. I'm saying you and Maya are the best things that have happened to me in years. I'm saying I want you in my life, not as an employee, but as… He stopped, seeming to search for words. As mine, if you'll have me. Tears spilled down Jasmine's cheeks. This is crazy. We barely know each other. You're a… She gestured vaguely. And I'm a single mother with medical debt and a 15-year-old Honda and you're everything, he interrupted. Your courage and grace and fierce love, and you make me want to be better than I am. You make me want things I thought I'd given up on. You make me feel human. His hand came up, cupping her bruised face with heartbreaking gentleness. Let me take care of you, both of you. Let me give you the life you deserve. Let me. Jasmine kissed him. She surged forward, closing the distance between them, pressing her mouth to his with all the desperation and desire and relief of the day's terror. For a heartbeat, he froze in surprise. Then he was kissing her back with an intensity that stole the air from her lungs. His mouth was warm and firm and tasted like whiskey and promises. One hand still cradled her face, while the other slid into her hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss. Jasmine's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, needing to feel his heat and solidity and the proof that they were both alive, both safe, both here. The kiss was everything. Desperation and tenderness, fear and relief, want and need all tangled together. His lips moved against hers with devastating precision, taking and giving in equal measure. When his tongue traced the seam of her mouth, she opened for him without hesitation, and the taste of him flooded her senses like dark honey. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every nerve ending came alive under his touch. His hand in her hair sent shivers down her spine, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with such gentleness it made her ache. She could feel his heartbeat where their chests pressed together, could feel the tremor in his fingers that betrayed how much control this was costing him. He kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning, like she was precious and he'd been searching for her his entire life, like she was his and he would never let her go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-Jun rested his forehead against hers. His eyes were closed, his jaw clenched like he was trying to maintain control by sheer force of will. "Is that a yes?" he asked, his voice rough. "That's a yes," Jasmine breathed. "To all of it. To everything." "Mine," he said, and the possessiveness in his tone made her shiver. "Yours," she confirmed. "Then, if we're doing this, I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. No more hiding who you are or what you do. I'm choosing this with eyes wide open, but I need honesty." Min-Jun pulled back to look at her fully. "My family's business isn't all legal. You know that. There are parts of my life that are dark, dangerous." "I know," Jasmine said, "and I'm still choosing this. Choosing you. But I need truth." "Then you'll have it." He kissed her again, soft and sweet. Always. In the back seat, Maya stirred but didn't wake, and Jasmine held Min-Jun's gaze, feeling the weight of the choice she'd just made, the danger, the impossibility, the beautiful, terrifying reality of loving this man who'd just promised her everything. And there it is. Justice served, love earned. If this story touched your heart, if you smiled when Jasmine finally had her moment, I need your support. Subscribe to the channel, like this video. Share it with someone who needs this message. That dignity has no price, that true love exists, that everyone deserves to be seen. Leave a comment with your favorite moment. Was it when Min-Jun destroyed Vivian's life with 3 phone calls? When he promised to burn the city down? Or that kiss you waited an entire hour to see? I read every comment. These stories exist because of you. Your click, your comment, your share, each one matters. Each one brings more stories of invisible people who refuse to disappear. Now let me show you what happened 6 months later. 6 days later, federal agents arrested Vivian Chen at SeaTac Airport, attempting to board a flight to Monaco with $200,000 in cash and a fake passport. Marcus Wong had already disappeared into witness protection, his career destroyed, his testimony ensuring Vivian would face decades in prison. The Chen family paid back every stolen dollar and publicly disowned their daughter. Min-Jun watched the news coverage with cold satisfaction. Jasmine curled against his side. "It's over," he said quietly. "She never really could hurt me," Jasmine murmured. "Not the parts that matter." He kissed her head, breathing in the scent of her cheap floral shampoo that he'd grown to love more than any perfume. "Move in with me. You and Maya, officially, as my family." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. "Maya's medication, her insurance, if I quit my job, I'll cover everything," he said simply. "Her medication, her appointments, whatever she needs. I've already spoken with Dr. Patel about a new treatment. The best pediatric cardiac surgeon in the country." He paused. "Let me give her that chance." "Why?" she whispered. "Because I love you. Because Maya deserves every chance at a full life. Because you're mine, and I take care of what's mine." "I love you too," Jasmine breathed. "Yes, to all of it." The first month was adjustment. Maya thrived with her new medication, delighted to have David as a constant companion. Jasmine enrolled in online business courses. David started calling her Aunt Jazz. The second month, Min-Jun introduced her to his family. They welcomed her with cautious warmth, recognizing something they'd never seen in him before: happiness. The third month, Maya had her surgery. The best cardiac surgeon in the country repaired the defect that had haunted every day of her life. In the waiting room, Jasmine held Min-Jun's hand for 8 hours. When Dr. Patel emerged smiling, they both cried. 6 months later, Jasmine stood in the penthouse that had once intimidated her, now filled with evidence of their blended family. Maya's artwork covered the refrigerator. Lego cities sprawled across the living room. Photographs lined the hallway, the zoo, the kitchen, the Japanese garden where Min-Jun had proposed with both children as witnesses. She wore his ring now, simple platinum with a single diamond. In 2 weeks, they'd marry in that garden, Maya as flower girl and David as ring bearer. The door opened. Min-Jun walked in with both children, all 3 covered in flour. "There was an incident with cookie dough," he explained, flour in his dark hair. "Uncle Min said we could lick the spoon," Maya announced. "After baking the cookies," Min-Jun clarified. "Not instead of." Jasmine laughed. "Go clean up. Dinner's in 20 minutes. As the children ran off, Min-Jun pulled her close despite the flour. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Twice," Jasmine smiled. "But I'll never get tired of hearing it." "I love you," he murmured, kissing her softly. "Every day, everything, forever." 3 years later, Maya was healthy and taking ballet. David was healing. Twin boys, James and Jun, had their father's eyes and their mother's smile. Jasmine managed the Park Family Foundation's Domestic Workers Initiative, providing fair wages and dignity to hundreds. The woman who once scrubbed these floors now took up space without apology, loved without fear. And the man born into darkness had found his light in a parking garage on a rainy November night, in a woman who refused to be invisible, in a love that chose courage over obligation. Some stories don't have happy endings. This one did. We've reached the end. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and comment where you're listening to this story from. Your support makes all the difference and keeps these stories coming to you. Thank you for being here.